Hi, and welcome to Spark Supply Chain Technology and Advisory Podcast. It's the first one, our inaugural one. Really super excited about that. It's called basically Containers, Pallets and Boxes. And this episode, is where did it all go? Did anybody get hurt in the process? I'm your host. My name's Alistair Yates. I've worked in supply chain for about 30 years now. And I'm going to, with my three guests, dig into supply chain, and we're going to go through related to stock loss, security, and safety. So, a quick introduction to my guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I've got Ruth Waring coming in today from Women in Logistics. Super excited that she's come here today. I know it's fairly local where we're recording, but it's lovely to have her. And I've got Gordon and Chris from Anchor Security Systems. And I'm, again, really super excited to see what they've got to say related to security. So I'll ask Ruth to introduce herself first.
Thank you very much, Al. So my name's Ruth Waring, and I am a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. My business is called RW Consulting, and I do women in logistics as a pro bono sideline. So I'm actually a transport and compliance consultant in my day job. So very interesting, all sorts of different things that I get involved with. I do training. I wrote and deliver the Warehouse Manager's Certificate of Professional Competence with the UK Warehousing Association. I do health and safety. I do operator licensing compliance, and I do 3 ISO standards. So lots of interesting things always going on. And of course, Women in Logistics is a great sideline to have, which I established with Claire Bottle in 2008.
And thank you very much for that. And as a logistician with a 20-year-old daughter at university, very supportive of that.
Thank you.
I'd like to see a lot more women in logistics because I genuinely think that it's been severely lacking over the years. So thank you.
Thank you
for coming on. Now I'm going to go over to Chris and introduce Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you?
My name is Chris Morren. I work for Anchor Sound and Security. We're specialists in warehouse security systems, mainly focusing on 3PL fashion operators, where they're selling high value, desirable items. And in the cost of living crisis, this is obviously quite a high risk area where fashion, beauty or electronic items or similar things, security is just as important inside the building as it is outside the building. So, and also thrown into that, you have the high churn of temporary staff during peak seasons, which then means there's a double need for security inside the building. And that's really where we focus on trying to optimize those systems so it actually becomes a productivity tool rather than just a static system that sits on the wall.
And over to Gordon as well, also from Anchor.
Thank you, Alistair. Yeah, it's good to be here today. And Chris has given us a good lead in, but we specialise in security systems for warehousing and logistics environments and focusing on what happens inside the warehouse environments and where improvements can be made in health and safety and security, and working out where goods go to and from.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Right, let's have a bit of fun. So I'm going to ask the question to everybody. What is the strangest or unexpected thing that you've seen go missing within your supply chain, or the weirdest health and safety accident that you can actually talk about? And I am going to start with Ruth. See how we go here.
Hi. Well, one of the first jobs I had when after I finished my graduate training, I started 36 years ago this week with XL Logistics, now DHL. My first proper job with them was at the French distribution centre for Marks and Spencer's. And we had various weird and wonderful products, but there was a particularly smelly aisle. Nice smells, but it was very smelly. And we once had something like 3 tons of very, very smelly shampoo just disappear into the ether. I don't know where it went. It disappeared off the system and we never, ever found out where it was.
Wow. Sorry, wow. I forgot to press my button there. That was so funny. There is must be a lot of people with some very good clean hair.
Clean hair in France, exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, next. I'm not sure where this will go, Gordon. I'm sure you've seen many things as well.
We've seen a few things, not necessarily with our eyes, but from our customers. We have an interesting one in the fashion industry where fashion items, attractive items, particularly things like jumpers and coats and overcoats, are being worn out of premises when they weren't worn into premises. So the systems were being put in place to make sure that the garments they were wearing when they left were the same garments they had when they came in for very expensive high-end items. One of the most...
Sorry, back to you, my mistake.
Probably one of the worst health and safety ones I'm aware of was where a forklift was used to carry carpet rolls and had a very long metal pole out the front of it. And unfortunately, somebody was struck by the pole. I didn't witness it, fortunately, myself, but I'm told from a supplier that was what happened. That wasn't very nice. So forklifts in warehouses is a key focus for us on the health and safety point of view.
Thank you for that. I'm going to add in two. Firstly, I was looking after a warehouse in Nottinghamshire, and it was a freight forwarding business, and I must have been in my mid-20s at the time, and not myself, but I had to go and find it. We lost a nose cone of an aeroplane. Now you have to, just the sheer size of it, wonder how you could lose a nose cone. And another one, and I'm absolutely not going to say when the time, from a safety point of view, when something happened, walking through a warehouse with the head of operations, and we were literally just doing a morning walk around, just checking everything is okay. We knew that we'd had problems with containers, and we had a container coming in, and while I was actually filming, I was filming it being opened. The container door was opened by the gentleman. The driver got the shock of his life, as often happens sometimes with badly stacked pallets. It flew open. The driver himself was shaken. But the interesting thing was that the actual load missed me by about a metre, which was a fairly easy one to explain to people, shall we say. So, right, let's move on to we're going to do stock safety and security, but let's move on to stock. I've been looking at some figures which I found absolutely staggering, and I've done a very lazy look at AI, as people do. These could be slightly out, but the figures themselves are amazing. British Retail Consortium suggesting that there could be up to 2 billion stock loss in shrinkage in 2024. You'd like to wonder where that actually went to. Cost of failed deliveries last mile. Estimated cost, again, one figure that came to me was £1.2 billion, right? And I'm really interested when we look at stock, and from a Spark perspective, we're looking to make sure people reduce stock and don't have too much from a working capital perspective, but also for all these sort of reasons. There's obviously organised crime. We won't go into all the details of organised crime, but then health and safety. And I've actually seen a fatality in a warehouse, and that was actually a cardiac arrest. It wasn't an accident, but the impact to an operation of safety. You look at the health and safety exec figures, it's up to, I found it staggering, 7.1 billion over a couple of years. So I find that a really fair whack of money and downtime, more importantly, and effects on brands. So I'm going to go to Ruth now and just take a point from your compliance work. Where do you think that the main areas are?
So when I teach the warehouse manager CPC, this is a subject that we cover in some detail as part of the CPC. And the thing that really amazed me was the amount of inside jobs there are when stock is actually stolen. And it's not necessarily obvious how it's going out. So I know, for example, at one warehouse that I visited, they not only do breath alcohol testing on the way in to check that the forklift truck drivers are safe to drive, but they also breath test them on the way out because they actually hold alcohol in the warehouse. So the risk is actually that they get drunk at work and sort of drink the product and then get out. So that's one of the interesting things. The other interesting thing is that we talk about the motivation why people steal from their own employer, which I think is quite an interesting psychological phenomenon. And a lot of it is because people feel that it's a victimless crime. I think that's one of the big issues. So they don't see it. They think, oh, well, the insurance will pick this up. You know, the company doesn't actually suffer. But of course, every single thing has a knock-on effect. So if you have an insurance claim next year, you will pay more because you'll be seen as a greater risk. So every single theft, even if it's a relatively small thing, does actually eventually have an impact, not only on the business, but of course on the long-term sort of future of the jobs in that business. So you are eventually only harming yourself. So I think that's an interesting one. The other thing is when people are sort of mildly disgruntled, not disgruntled enough to actually get another job, but mildly disgruntled enough to steal something as a sort of, I'll show you, you know, I'll get back to you in my own sweet way, and I'm going to steal this stuff. And you do hear stories of people stealing enough parts for a car that eventually they can build their own car, and you know, all sorts of stories of people stealing stuff. But I think it's very much this actually understanding what the motivation is, because I think there's also a lot of it where people think, well, if somebody else is doing it, it's acceptable. A bit like, you know, sort of people expenses scandals where they say, well, everybody was doing it, I didn't realize it was wrong. And I think that's a part of a problem with a culture where if you see a colleague doing it and getting away with stealing things from a warehouse, then you think, well, it's obviously just normal. And even if your moral compass says it's wrong, you eventually start thinking, well, it's obviously okay, because they're turning a blind eye. Maybe it's accepted as a perk of the job. So those are some of the interesting motivations for why people steal from their own employer.
Brilliant. And I have to say, I absolutely concur with you in terms of things that I've seen, and the disgruntled employee aspect, and dare I say, organised crime, shall we say, is a major factor. On that note, I'm going to bring in Gordon, because I'm sure Gordon's got some stories to tell.
Yeah, it resonates very much, Ruth, what we've discussed already, and we hear of these stories, I was going to say almost daily, not what we'd like to, but we have a customer who sells food products and they call it grazing.
Yeah.
And the impact, of course, is far beyond the actual cost of the product lost. In this environment, the product loss may be very, very small, and possibly the perpetrator thinks, oh, it's £1, it's £5, it's 20 pence, it cost me nothing, it even costs less to my employer. But they probably don't realise that by doing that, they breach the whole supply chain. So when that product potentially arrived at their customer, the customer or the 3PL is not even their product, it arrives at the customer, the box is opened, there's something missing. That has an impact on the relationships all the way from the consumer, potentially at the retail level, down to through the supply chain to the reseller, the distributor, back up to the manufacturer. That trust has been breached all the way down. So the impact is far higher than the actual cost typically of the product lost. And obviously there has to be some sort of investigation. They have to find out why this happens, which also takes time, and it is a distraction. So we see technology helping in that regard to prevent that kind of behaviour as a deterrent, and then as to preventing that getting worse or spreading.
Cool. And I'm really interested because I know that we've also got Chris here from your business, and I know that he's been looking at some of the practical elements of it. And I've seen it firsthand myself, where people have said, no, we did deliver that. And it's like, well, something was either taken out of the box, or dare I say, awkward thing to say, customer, we know we delivered this because we've done some checks. And I think this is where Chris comes in, because I think you've got some really cool software on that area to actually evidentially show that you have delivered, or at least sent out what you sent out.
Yeah, so what we have is a technology we call video audit, which is an AI camera, and typically it's placed above a packing bench or packing area, which then allows you to see exactly how the parcel was packed, exactly what went in that parcel. Not only that, it's date stamped with that exact consignment number, which means it's instantly searchable, which means whenever you get a claim or you want to check back on that individual item, you can type in that code and it'll go straight through to that bit of footage. You can see everything around that parcel, exactly how it was packed, what went in there. That means that you can see how the goods came in, you can see how it was packed and picked, packed and sent out. But then the next thing is what happens in transit. And the other thing is what happens when the customer opens it. So now we've got the proof of exactly how it entered our care, how it left our care, and then it's down to the transit and the actual customer.
Cool. And I'm going to ask a question here in terms of the compliance with Ruth, in terms of you can manage one part of the supply chain, right? And I've seen it, I've been there, and I've done what Chris has suggested. But how do we see that, Ruth, across the whole supply chain with, you know, lots of business or business to consumer organisations out there? How do you think we can get that chain more secure?
Well, obviously, one of the big areas is trust. And if you've got that technology that you can prove that something has happened, it's an awful lot easier to trust somebody, because otherwise it's always going to be he said, he said, he said, she said. And I think that element of the fact that you can check. And obviously with supply chains, one of the big things is a chain. So if the weakest link is somebody potentially stealing something further up the chain, as Gordon said earlier, there's going to be a knock-on effect all the way through. So I think it's really, really important that this technology can help engender that trust between those links in the chain. And the fact that it's not somebody's opinion, you can just immediately go to the evidence, and that evidence is vital. So we can have ISO 9001, we can have BRC, food storage and distribution, all of these standards, but this is the absolute icing on the cake. So we can not only show that somebody has physically checked that off, but we've then got the proof that you can see with your own eyes what's actually gone on. And then, of course, further on down the chain, then you can say, well, we know that between here and here, this is where the problem happened. And that gives us so much more opportunity to actually find what's gone on and find the culprit, if there is a culprit. And I think, the other thing that you mentioned, Gordon, is contamination risk. Once somebody's broken open a box, that's probably got some sort of seal on it. There'll be all sorts of issues around maybe product security, maybe food security. So there's, as you said, a lot more risk within the supply chain than just that one person doing something that they feel is okay. So I think it's that having that sort of link and having that checkable, auditable link is vital.
And I think you make a great comment related to trust, and it's also super powerful. And I'm going to bring this slightly towards health and safety as well, and accidents, because I know that there's lots of technology out there. And I'm going to throw this one out to Gordon in terms of that trust, in terms of helping workers, looking after lone workers, and all the technology. But what other things have you got in your toolbox that are making a difference at the moment?
Yeah, thanks. I think we all know that health and safety is a very big issue in warehouses these days, both in terms of duty of care of staff members, and then the actual monetary impact. We all know if there is a health and safety. We also, unfortunately, do see a lot of rise in false claims, costing lots and lots of money, and being able to prove what actually went on. It wasn't disproving falsified claims is quite a big part of what we try and do by providing CCTV footage of it. In terms of the health and safety risks, there is increasing availability of AI technology to do lots of interesting and exciting things. So we can detect slips, trips and falls. If somebody falls over in a warehouse, we can receive a notification instantly that happens. We can look at areas where there may be a conflict between vehicles and people, typically forklift trucks and personnel in the same area where they shouldn't be in the same area, or it's not confirmed by policy. We can confirm look at where personnel are in the wrong area. So they have a designated area of personnel should not be in there. And the more advanced AI technology looks at things like holding handrails within a particular area. So walking upstairs, the policy says you should hold a handrail. Entering a vehicle, this policy says you have 2 points of contact to enter. And some other increasing things around the use of AI in vehicle movement as well, checking that trailers are hitched, checking that loading is carried out appropriately, with appropriate number of straps on the appropriate loading on the back of a lorry or a truck. And the technology moves on, and there's lots of interesting things happens, and almost whatever you want to do, the technology can be used to that end.
Thanks for that. And I find some of those areas really interesting. I'm just wondering, I'm going to throw this one out to Ruth. Well, what do you think the appetite is out there? Because technology is expensive, inverted commas. Obviously, there's cost-benefit analysis for doing certain things. Do you think there's an appetite in, for example, the UK Warehousing Association, the road haulage industry, to actually do these investments and get some payback, shall we say, and some safety?
Absolutely, I think there is. One of the biggest challenges in any logistics operation is getting people to report near misses. Near miss reporting we talk about the accident iceberg. So the iceberg you can see above the waterline is the tip of the iceberg, which are the actual injury accidents. The bottom of the pyramid is basically the vast number of near misses, damages, unsafe acts that are going on constantly. And the problem is getting people, human beings who are already busy, to have the mindset to report near misses is very, very difficult. And the brilliant thing about this technology is that it reports those near misses for you. So a near miss isn't a Tom and Jerry anvil falling and almost hitting you on the head, or like your example where the load came out. Most near misses are where two things if two things had gone wrong at once, there would have been a serious accident. And if one of those things happens, it's actually a near miss. So it could be somebody, a pedestrian in a non-pedestrian area. It could be somebody on their mobile phone walking through a busy warehouse. Those things on their own, who's going to remember that that's a near miss and report it? But AI will. AI will pick up on that. And I think this is where the appetite will come from. And it's to do with accident prevention. And preventing an accident is so much more cost effective than having an accident. So prevention is always better than cure. So I think if we go back to this accident iceberg, and if we can prevent, so there's theories that say there's between 200 and thousands of near misses for each injury accident. Actually predicting those accidents before they happen and then stopping them happening is huge and really bottom line benefits. Because if we go back to the theory of, why do we take health and safety seriously? Moral reasons, financial reasons, and legal reasons. And actually using this type of technology ticks all of those three boxes for businesses, but the financial one is always going to be absolutely vital. So I think an investment in something like this will actually have a major bottom line benefit for logistics operators.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm really interested about the psychology of it in terms of, we don't want drivers to fall asleep at the wheel, that sort of stuff. So there is that protectionism, but we also need to be cognizant in it of not putting people under pressure. But then if they're doing the right things, they shouldn't feel under pressure, shall we say. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how it develops.
Can I say something? Yep. So the other thing I want to just say is I think everybody's got used to using cameras. So cameras on drivers, so HGV drivers, risk of falling asleep at the wheel. We've also got used to dash cam footage, picking up potential accidents, vehicles coming around corners, harsh cornering, etc. We have those reports already on HGV drivers. This is just the same technology, but using it in the warehouse setting. And I think that's a really important point. It's not scary. It's not kind of, weird stuff. It's things that businesses are already using in another context. It's just applying that in a slightly different way. And I think people need to get their head around that this is AI for good. And that's a really important point.
Absolutely agree with you on that. I have a tracker in my own car. Actually probably makes me drive much better, I'm going to say. And then after a while you forget that it's there. So I'm with that. Right, I'd like to say thank you for answering all those questions. I'm going to go to a quick fire round, right, just for a bit of fun, pull things together. So again, I'll start with you, Ruth, and I'm going to come to you, Chris. Ruth, very quickly, worst supply chain myth.
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's...
You need to press your buttons.
Oh. I honestly haven't thought about this one, so can you go to Chris first?
Right, okay, so we're going to go to Chris. What's your favourite bit of tech?
I think I'm going to say the integration between access control and all the HR, payroll, and time and attendance systems. If you can integrate that, that is a very quick, simple way of automating a whole load of unnecessary processes, which becomes a powerful productivity tool. I think that's my favourite one.
I like that. Right, Ruth. I know.
I'm all right then.
We're okay. I'm gonna ask you another question. The joy of podcasting, right? It's a nice, easy one. What do you think UK retailers are perhaps getting wrong in health and safety or security?
I think one of the big things is the focus on security as an external, focusing on external threat. So spending a lot of money on external security guards, fencing, CCTV, but focusing entirely on the external kind of, robbers coming in and stealing stuff. Actually, I think a lot of it is thinking differently about if you were going to try and smuggle something out of this warehouse and you had a lot of time to think about it, like somebody doing a picking job, how would you go about doing that and getting inside the mind of the temporary agency person who's thinking, actually, this is a really serious potential. I can get some stuff here. So it's getting into the mindset rather than think of the external factors.
I actually agree with that. So you go to a lot of sites. I've been to sites we've got Rottweilers with a perimeter fence in Spain, and they look very hungry. But you're like, yeah, I get that. So thank you for that one. Right, very short question, all a bit of fun. Chris, pallets, wooden or plastic?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier. That there's no real benefit of. There's no real bad thing about either of them actually, because they're both natural products. They both have very distinct uses to themselves. And to me, I mean, you just use whichever one works for your company. I don't really mind either way around.
That's a great answer. Gordon, drone deliveries, future or fad?
I think that is future, and probably not very far away. I get quite interested and excited by that kind of thing. We look at how far drone technology has progressed, in probably mostly driven by the technology of war, which unfortunately is the case over the last even 5 years. I don't think such things are very far off at all in terms of commercial deliveries by drone, manned or unmanned. That's my take.
Do you know, it's really interesting you say that, because actually, if you look through, logistics history, unfortunately, war does advance technology very quickly, and we've seen that, with the D-Day landing, for example, the technology that went into that, and now, like you say, with drones. Right, I'm going to move to a closing question for everybody. Right, I'm going to start with Ruth. So, if you could make one overnight change to reduce stop loss or say improve safety, what would it be? Press the button.
I would say eliminate forklift trucks.
Yes, I can agree with that. I've had a few near misses in my time, I'm sure. Gordon, same question.
Just run that question.
Yeah, so if you could make a change overnight to reduce stock loss or safety, what would it be?
Is this a change that involves investing in something, or something we can just turn on? I still see relatively low levels of automation in warehouses, and a lot of manual work which could actually be automated, from I think. So I think increasing the levels of automation will improve the accuracy of stock picks, hopefully, and it will decrease the health and safety issues. That's my take.
Absolutely, and you can also segregate stock more easily. So, same question, please.
I'm going to answer this in a very different way. Is that I think culture is extremely important in a company, because if you have the right culture, all those issues that you have throughout the company actually become solvable, and there's a can-do attitude to solving them, and that actually carries a whole load of benefits to it, and it also makes it fun.
Do you know what? I absolutely agree with that. And I used to work for a leading mobile phone company, and one of their pillars of the company was fun as well as honesty, and it was a mobile phone business. So very nickable product. So, right, I'm going to say to everybody, absolutely thanks for coming on. Mental note related to the location we've all got to, which is a superb facility. We'll check the postcode for everybody. That said, you can't see our location. We're at the Warwick Innovation District, powered by the University of Warwick. They kindly gave us their podcast suite, which they call the United Nations, which those in the room are all together will completely understand. So thanks very much to Warwick. I'm going to say thank you, Ruth, for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Gordon. I do hope you enjoyed yours.
I think I'm